Welcome to New North, a podcast where we interview great people redefining life after 50, who have perfected the art and science of successful longevity. We dive deep to find out their methods and experiences that have helped them find their new north.
Welcome to the next episode of New North. I'm Shantanu Paul, and today I have with me Rama Bijapurkar. Welcome, Rama.
Thank you.
Rama is one of the most well-known consumer experts in India. She's a very famous author, and she's also an independent director in many companies, and we have worked together in the past. As you all know, New North is an attempt to understand the connection between curiosity, learning, and productive longevity. And of course, the exploration continues through these conversations. So thank you, Rama, for coming. And in fact, I think most people know that you are one of the most well-known star alumnus of IIM Ahmedabad. So I'm sure you spent some wonderful times there as a student, and of course now you also teach there. So tell us some stories about your life in IIM Ahmedabad.
Gosh, IIM Ahmedabad, thank you, Shantanu. First and foremost, we have worked together a long time. We're old friends, and I love the stuff that you do. So there is clearly life after entrepreneurship for you as well.
Yes.
IIM Ahmedabad is my spiritual home. It's my spiritual home because it has shaped so many parts of my life. My favorite memory of IIM Ahmedabad, of course, is meeting my husband. I was 18 when I entered IIM Ahmedabad and 20 when I left. And I got engaged at 19. He was a PhD student. So yeah, I would say that a lot of my life has been shaped by that. I think the big privilege I think my generation had then that I don't know if generations today have is just the rock stars that we were taught by, of which one of them you know is Dr. Rangarajan. And he was the kind of rock star to whom I could say 20 years later when liberalization happened and we all had to learn economics, that you know the kind of economics you taught us isn't really the kind of stuff they're writing about in the papers today. And he would take that on board seriously, and I was taught by many golden greats. So I think what I loved was the fact that I was taught accounting without ever knowing a debit from a credit. I had an undergrad degree in physics. I did not know accounting. And we had professors who would say, come, Miss Rao, where does this entry go? You don't know where it goes? Shall I put it in the finance minister's suspense account? And from there, I now serve on audit committees of boards, and I have learnt. And so my favorite thing about IIM Ahmedabad is a statement that Ravi Mathai is supposed to have made, the founder director. And he said, we teach you how to learn so you can learn the rest of your life. And what I love about that is, if you look at 1991, and I graduated in 77, right? So in 91, the world changed for us. India got liberalized, suddenly everything. So if we had not been taught how to learn and how to solve problems from first principles, my generation and the generations before should have been wiped out in 1991. But actually, if you look at it, K.V. Kamath went on to build what he built, you know, everybody else went on to do what it is that they did, and we all survived and did well and contributed to whatever little things we were doing. So that to me is the most precious thing about IIM Ahmedabad. It was fun. It was, I think friendships are very, very important. So I think it was what has often been called the patchwork quilt, and I think the patchwork quilt was there when my husband passed away. The patchwork quilt was there for all our birthdays. The patchwork quilt is a carpet of love and support on which the rest of us carry on.
So patchwork of quilt is patchwork of quilt. That's a very interesting
it's a patchwork
concept. Never heard that before. But I really also thought that your comment about Ravi Mathai's point about we teach you how to learn so you can learn for the rest of your life is, I think, as apt a metaphor as the New North podcast series that we are doing, because the whole idea is to look at learning as a lifelong activity that keeps you extremely intellectually stimulated and of course keeps you as a problem solver. But before we come to learning, I'm curious about your journey into authorhood. I know that your most famous book, perhaps, or at least your first famous book, came out more than 20 years ago. And We Are Like This Only. Was that your first book?
I think it was my first book.
So tell us about your, transition from being a marketing expert coming out of IIM Ahmedabad, career consulting, and then starting to write. Because I think most of India knows you today as this writer of this book and then other books subsequently. So I'd love to hear your journey as a writer.
I have been writing well before my book, and I'll tell you why also. I had an Economic Times column for 14 years. I had a Business Standard column for about 10 years. I wrote differently in both of them. A friend used to joke that there's real men writing and bimbo writing, which meant more flippant, more serious. And the reason I wrote, I think, is because it enabled you to collect your thoughts and put them out there. And when you are in the service business, you need others to put their money where your mouth is. So if I wanted, so to me it was advertising. People said to me that, why do you write when you don't get paid? You get paid very little for writing. And I was like, are you crazy? I get 1,000 words in the Economic Times on the clock every month, or a full page somewhere else. And so at that time you wrote about whatever it is that incensed you about the world at that point in time. And I think that was the purpose of writing. It was, and you know, this was before Twitter. By the way, I'm not on Twitter because I will lose all my friends. I'm impulsive, but there is a reason to do this. So similarly, this book was also because I was getting, India had just opened up and there were so many theories about what India is and what India isn't. The great Indian middle class. I worked for a consulting company, a global consulting company, with a Dutch-Brit partner who said, why do you believe Indians are different? Which I did, and India is different. He says, do you wear your noses on your ears? Does water flow uphill in India? And they would be doing things like presentation, which is like this, and on one axis would be the consumption of everything under the sun, and on this axis per capita income, and they would start plotting countries. Now, I felt the analogy school was wrong for a whole variety of reasons, unless you did it much better. And I used to say that as our incomes increase, we will not give our children more Coca-Cola because the per capita toilets have not increased. So why are you guys not getting it? And I think every time I made these presentations about my version of India and heard the pushback, I thought it's time to put it all together. And the title is We Are Like That Only. The international version, by the way, was called Winning in the Indian Market. And I half joke and say, it was a different publisher, that is about conquest. It's a very Western paradigm. And this is about surrender. It's a very Indian paradigm. And I had C.K. Prahlad, my teacher from IIM Ahmedabad, who later went on, as you know, to Ann Arbor. And he said he would write the foreword for it. And his last line was a line I wish I had written. And it said, listen to the logic of consumer India from inside consumer India. And in one sentence, it summed up what I had said in 250 words. And obviously, that is why he's C.K. Prahlad. So I write when I just feel that I have something to turn around and say which is strong enough and no one's listening, or I want people to listen. And it helps you pull your thoughts together.
So let me just ask a follow-up question on this. We Are Like That Only. Were you surprised by the reception it got as a book over the years?
I was, because I remember thinking that there are 100 people in the world I want to read this book, and can I afford to buy 100 copies of this book and mail it to them? And I don't really care if anybody reads it or not. And while it was an entirely Indian edition, it became required reading at Wharton at one point briefly. I would get letters from people in rural Italy saying I'm working on rural consumers and I really have understood your books. I was just surprised at how widely it traveled, but I was also surprised at how it seemed to be at that a defining point where people in India saw themselves in it. So I was surprised that my mother's friends read it. I was surprised that you know, the organizer, which is a political magazine, carried carried a review of it. So it was entirely serendipity, and it was wonderful.
I think it must have sold, what, 500,000 copies by now?
I don't know. You know, I never track sales of books, ever. What I look at is, did it frame a debate?
Yeah, of course it did.
And I think it framed a debate. And
I'm not even, I mean, the critical acclaim is a given. That was one of the most
not critical acclaim, framing an everyday debate. So did it give people the courage to say, yes, we're different? Did it give, so every time foreign visitors would come in, the local company officials or CEOs would give it to them and say, read it. So to me, that impact of shaping how a whole group of people thought about ourselves was important. I don't think the royalties would buy me any diamonds, I will say that. But it was, but on the other hand, if you want to know how the book thing works, it builds your brand, and that enables you to get price premiums and other work that you do.
Of course, we know that.
So the book sales are entirely inconsequential.
The book is marketing, that's not
yes, exactly
Department of
right.
Revenue. Got
exactly right.
Yes, so you did frame the debate on this whole topic for sure for entire, next 20 few decades, now more than 20 years. The other book that people always refer to, which I thought also got a lot of traction, was Customer in the Boardroom. I think you wrote that much later. What were the thoughts behind that? What led up to that book?
So that book was actually the result of my teaching and the course I'd set up in IIM Ahmedabad. So what happened was that I'd spent a lot of my life in market research, and I was searching for the Holy Grail. Again, if you put a 2x2 matrix, which is business understanding and consumer understanding or customer understanding, I found that market research companies were great on customer understanding, terrible on business understanding. So whether we were investigating the market for a multinational or for a Popatlal and Sons, we would do exactly the same research, because we were researching the market, not through the lens of the company. And other companies, the typical consulting mold was high on business, but it was low on customer understanding, the classical consultants. So I thought I'd look for the Holy Grail, and at that time I actually went and worked in one of the top global consulting firms, and I said, let's see whether the space exists there. It did not exist there. And at that time I met a teacher of mine called Indira Parekh, and she said, if you believe there's a game that only you know how to play, then you have to go and create your own playground, stop complaining. So that's when I set up my own consulting. Now, in order to do that, I also taught at IIM around whatever I was working on. So if I was working on market research, I taught the market research course for 15 years, because there was a symbiotic relationship between what you do. Similarly, since I started this new area, I set up a new course called Customer-Based Business Strategy. We originally did it for a bit of fun. I teach with my teacher, Professor Jain, who is phenomenal. Problem solving is what he taught us, and he's really quite a force of nature. And there was another strategy course called Core Competence and Competitive Strategy, which was called CCCS. It was a good course.
Core Competence, of course, Prahlad again.
But this was Core Competence is, of course, what CK gave the world, sitting by himself in his office, extraordinary. And so this was the course. And so I thought, if this is the ultimate inside out, because all about the insides of the company, let's do the ultimate outside in. So theirs was CCCS, we called ours CBBS, Customer Based Business Strategy. After 15-20 years of teaching this course, of 15, we just finished 25 years. So after 15 years of teaching it, I said I didn't want to teach it anymore. So I wrote the book based on teaching, and I had set up my own consulting to do this. I dedicated it to my teacher, Professor Jain, and to my students, and I said, I'm tired, I can't teach this anymore. And that's why that book reads a little bit like a quasi-academic book. It needs an update. But of course, famous last words, I will never teach again, because we're still teaching that course 10 years later.
I thought you were saying the Messiah has to write a gospel. That was the gospel kind of
attempt. It was just the summation. So I think books are eventually, and it's C.K. Prahlad told me, he said, don't write for anybody else, write for yourself.
Yeah.
And so it's partly because you're incensed and you have something to say to the world, but when you start putting customer-based business strategy together, or any of these books together, the most fundamental things that you think you knew and you understood, when you have to write 3 pages on it, is not so easy, as we all know.
Deal with the cobwebs that we all have.
Yeah, and you have to deal with the shorthand, with the gaps, where you do skip, where the pulse leaps to the next point, but you're forced now to plug it.
Yes.
So yeah, that's the journey to writing.
That's as we say, one of the best ways to understand something is to teach it or write about it.
Yes.
You're forced to deal with the gaps in your own understanding, or even the leaps you make of faith.
Yes.
Wonderful. So obviously, so now you've heard your multiple avatars as a consultant, a marketer, an author, an academic, and of course independent director, so forth. So what's next? I mean, the next 20 years of your life as you look forward, do you have a plan? Do you plan to retire? Do you plan not to retire?
I plan and have actually actively started putting it into process to have more time released. And what I mean by time released is time released to do what I want, and whether that fits into what I would largely call professional activity or whether it is vegetating on Netflix or whatever else it might be, I would like the opportunity to do that. Very often how we think, so I started my own consulting in 2000. And at that time, I had a portfolio of activities. There was consulting, there was writing, there was teaching, there was boards, and I would classify academic institution boards a little bit differently because they're a little bit of a labor of love. So that was the portfolio. And depending on the economy and depending on how I felt at any point in time, I would start moving the elements of this portfolio. The weight of the portfolio would keep changing over time.
Yes.
So that has actually worked very well. So, and within that also, if I felt the economy was really going bad, I would exchange the consulting portfolio for advisory boards, right? So I was on the Microsoft, Bungay, etc., Intuit advisory boards in India. And so that would kind of fit into more technical work, less governance work, but that would be. Then there was a time when the world was changing so dramatically in the country, the environment, that I went on a lot of financial services boards, because on every one of them, as you know, we would get lectured about the GDP, about the economy, about this sort of thing. So I had a bank board, I had a health insurance board, I was on CRISIL, which tells you about all the defaults that happen. And so then as a result of that, you begin to get for free a 360-degree lecture on the economy and whatever else they are looking at from practitioners, and it's so wonderful. You pay nothing for it and you get to hear all this stuff. And then when I thought, okay, now I don't really want to learn this anymore, then I went and did boards with regulators, because a regulator friend of mine told me that there is always an alternate logic. And I always felt, even when, as you know, we've had a lot of issues with regulators, but when you sit with the regulator, you say, kuch to hai. I mean, yeah, I can't contest your logic. I mean, I don't like it from where I sit, but you have a logic I can't deny. So it's the same spirit of titration. So now I have actually said I am not. Then in between I set up a think tank, because I said, let me go back to my core areas of core technical professional areas, not the applied and quasi. So now what I find I'm doing, so I leave it to myself, to my instinct to keep moving the portfolios around, because I feel that instinct is driving something, and when the portfolio settles, I look back and I say, okay, that was the logic for it. So I've said I'm not doing formal consulting anymore. That said, I mean, there is any of the new age companies that come and say, hey, we want you to work with us to think about these things. I've probably moved, I say yes without a second thought. I also say you name your number, it doesn't matter. And so to me, the purpose now of this is just curiosity of what you're learning with them. So I do less consulting, or literally no consulting. I say yes to people who say, will you join us to think about this particular problem in this particular way? Will you come and talk to us about this? Then I say, okay, you tell me what you're thinking, I tell you what you're thinking. So that consulting area, broadly business advisory, has kind of changed into a thought partnership. So it has morphed. Obviously it has released a lot of time, because regular consulting at decent enough fees is a lot of time. Along the way, as you know, my husband passed away, and I was heartbroken about the fact that he had not had time after the heavy lifting of life to enjoy his money and his friends and his beautiful homes and his daughter growing up. And that has constantly been a point in my head that I would like time to do that. But when I'm there, the dichotomy, I joke that so I'm also shutting down boards now, because I have done 150 years of listed boards, been there, done that, bought the t-shirt. So I am now down to 2 or 3. So yes, I am releasing time very actively. But what do you do with the time that you release? Because I also feel that unless you empty out stuff, you can't put in new stuff, will not even come in, right? That's the whole debate. We say academics have to be about 60% occupied so that they can think the remaining 40.
Yes.
But the minute you have specified teaching and you have to do this and you have to do that and you go up to 80-90%, then you're getting pedestrian publishing also out of it. So I've started emptying stuff out, and I have made a lot of progress now, because I'm now down to 2 or 3 boards. I have 2 or 3 think tank boards, which are very little in terms of stress levels. So with the time that is spared, I'm conceptualizing it as being between two poles. One is Viagra and one is Vairagya. A lot of people ask me, what is Vairagya? Do you understand the meaning? Yes, you do.
Yes,
you know Vairagya, okay. A lot of young people are like, what is that? And so as I wrote also, we are like that only Viagra is a very Western way of thinking, which says even if you can't do it, just get the job done. And Vairagya is even if you can do it, do you want to do it? So when I'm in Viagra mode, I agree to do a lot of things. That's how I wrote my most recent book, Lilliput Land. And I may write one more, I may not. And when I'm in Vairagya mode, I'm like, what's the point? We're all going to die. So I think finding balance is difficult. But how would I define the so-called retirement? I have no problem with the word retirement. I just call it make more time, because I've been my own my own employer since 2000, right?
Yeah.
So my other guru and mentor and everything wonderful person was a man called Tino Puri, who was with McKinsey. And I once asked Tino, I said, Tino, what are you doing? Because after all his McKinsey and his boards and things. And he said, well, basically, I'm an intellectual voyager. And he also said, all consumption, no production. But the intellectual voyager kind of struck me as a Saraswati ke pujari in that sense. And I have known people who do that, who just go wherever they're asked to go and give whatever they're capable of giving. And so that's where I am. So when I'm in Viagra mode, I agree to do a lot of things. When I'm in Vairagya mode, I wonder why I'm doing it. But I think there is a new portfolio, and that portfolio will settle, but it will create more time to not say I died before enjoying my homes and my money.
Fabulous. So I think this whole Vairagya versus Viagra is a whole new formulation. Have you written about this yet? I think an article is forthcoming. I think it will be fantastic.
No, I wrote about the two ways of life conceptually,
yes.
but in my own context, no. But it is, it is hard actually. It's not so easy, because when you get get flipped, when you get thrown from one pole to the other and you don't know what the trigger is that's causing it. As you know, today I'm all Viagra'd out because we've had this wonderful discussion on the way in. We've had this great discussion here. My mind is buzzing. I'm like so excited. And then I go back and say, oh God, I mean, like, did I really go to Gachibowli in the afternoon, and for what?
Yeah, what was the point of that? I think it's very interesting. I mean, so many things you said in the last few minutes triggered off so many other thoughts in my head, but I'll try to kind of lay out a few which might resonate with you as well. And one of them is this, I've been developing this theory for a long time, that we all have to find an action acceptance trade-off in our lives, right? We all have a great bias for action, and we want to do things and make things happen, make an impact, change things, understand them, communicate the understanding back, right? So action is the way we do this. But as a result of that, everything looks like a chance for action, but action also is at some level exhausting beyond a point. The 80-90% that you talked about. So acceptance, stepping back, looking at it more neutrally, being kind of an observer rather than the observed, or the observer as opposed to the actor, right? So I think we all need to, people who have a bias for action need to learn more acceptance. People who have by nature always accepting need to have developed some bias for action. So I think people are, they come from different polarities in different directions, but a lot of people can only act and can't accept, and vice versa. So that's one. The other thing that you mentioned, which was interesting, is that this idea of creating space in your head by releasing time, which I thought was a very interesting expression. The when we write software, it's software lives a long time, and sometimes a software lives for 20 years, 25 years, and becomes millions and millions of lines of code, because new software generations of programmers come and add code. But nobody removes code.
Okay.
Right? So this code becomes more and more unwieldy over time.
Yes.
And then we have what we call dead code. Code which is no longer being used by any of the user behaviors, but it sits around because people are afraid to remove it, because they don't understand the consequence of removing it, right?
Right.
It's like a house.
Yeah.
You start off with an empty room, your living room, you add furniture, then you find better furniture, you add that, but you're afraid to remove the old ones, and the clutter increases.
Yes.
So the way you finally sort it out is you start removing stuff, lock, stock and barrel, and start to clear up the space, right? Similarly, in programming, we talk about refactoring, means that you refactor the code to go back to the basics of what is needed as opposed to what is there.
And you're always nervous, are you, about what is relevant that you're throwing out?
Yeah, so tools are there to advise you on what is likely to be a problematic removal versus what is a sure shot, happy removal.
But it's a discovery and you feel your way through.
There are tools for all that. But the point is, the term of reference is, it's called refactoring, that you refactor your code. And people who are trained in computer science talk about refactoring their life. Because I'm doing 5 things, of which 2 are really exciting and 3 I'm doing out of habit. So you refactor and you go back to 2 as opposed to the 5. Right? So
that's good to know that analogy. It's interesting.
Yeah, it's called code refactoring, life refactoring as a result. Okay, so moving on to the next section. So, you know, as you kind of look at your life now, as you opening up space, are you getting into other things? Like, I mean, clearly learning and curiosity is a central theme of your life. That was very evident for the last half an hour. But if you look at it from the perspective of other things that you do with your time, do you travel, do you read, do you, do crosswords? You know, people do different things. What are you getting increasingly? You mentioned Netflix in passing. I'll keep that as a reference.
All of them.
Yeah.
All of the above, I think. I also, by the way, knitted a sweater.
Oh.
With a pattern, with a teacher who's a friend of mine who I call Guru Mai now, because without her I would never have done it. She sits in an island off Vancouver. And yeah, so that was quite a learning journey. And I live in Bombay and I don't know what to do with the sweater now. But so I still have so I think about them as channels in the brain, I don't think about them, it took me a bit of time to conceptualize this, but I don't think about it as islands of work because that's too exhausting, islands of things. The channels in my brain. So yes, every morning I have to do spelling bee, Wordle, Worldle, there's a whole set of things. Sudoku. Sometimes I say to myself, my God, that whole Delhi-Bombay flight, all you did was Sudoku. Are you a loser? We've all also been raised more than bias for action. We've been raised with a bias for productivity.
Yes.
And labeling what is productive and what is not, I notice a lot of my friends struggle with it. So I have scrolled through so much Instagram and YouTube of late that I am the expert on the Spanish royal family, the British royal family, Donald Trump, Melania, the Hormuz Strait. And the question keeps coming up to me, is this productive? There are times when I'm scrolling through clips of Balchandar movies because I'm saying, okay, so this was Sindhu Bhairavi, okay, and this was how. And you keep asking yourself, is this productive, is this productive? But so now I've stopped asking myself, is this productive? And by productive, I don't mean revenue generating. It's just like when we were children, we were told that you don't get up in the morning and switch on a radio or a TV. Mornings are times when you deal with your own brain. So I'm still unable to rebel enough to switch on the TV as soon as I wake up. So in the morning will be reading, or it will be, so yeah, I play all these puzzles, I do for sure. I play endless online Scrabble. I play with Zoe the computer. I don't mind if she beats me because I think she's programmed to beat me, so she'd better beat me, that's her job. So sometimes I beat her, sometimes she beats me. I find online, I'm finding that now I'm finding that without entertainment, digital entertainment, I'm not able to just watch the world go by. So now I consciously try when I'm on a journey in a car or something to do nothing but to watch the world go by. But also because my area of work is consumer insight, I need to watch the world go by, which I do a lot of. I watch endless television. I read, people ask me, what do you read, what did you last read? I'm, again, I like the Voyager definition now, because now by definition, voyage means that it's the journey to somewhere, and like Christopher Columbus, you can end up in the wrong place or you can end up nowhere, you can drown in the sea.
Like the Star Trek, I mean, the voyage is ongoing and you never know what the next place will be.
Yeah. So I will read non-fiction, fiction, no problem with genres. For a while when I couldn't bear to read the Indian newspapers because I was not feeling good about reading the Indian newspapers and feeling bad about what's going on, whatever, somebody died, this thing happened, terrorist attack here, there. So then I read the Brit papers for a long time. I read the Times London. I loved their writing, it was really nice to read stuff that you had no stake in. So yeah.
Interesting. Yeah, so I mean, you made so many interesting comments in passing. So I presume that spelling bee, you're hitting genius every day?
All the time.
Okay.
And when I don't,
genius?
no, I will not give up till I get
How many hours will you be willing to spend till you get to genius if you have to?
There are times when I have got up to up to a fairly high level at 10 at night, and I say, okay, now I got to go to, I'm in bed, I want to check and it will be midnight. I cheat a little bit where I look at the hints that they give you, not the hints, you know, the New York Times tells you the grid, right? The 2-letter hints. So then I sit with those, I sit with that and one gadget which tells you how obsessed I am. I sit with this and another gadget, and I will move till I get it right. So I would say, how many hours are you willing to spend? If I don't do it that day, I will do it the next day.
So I think that's something we have in common.
Yeah.
So I was going to say that that's a great way to kind of assess type A personalities, you know, to see how much time are you willing to spend to get to genius
and sometimes I will move on to the next one to get the paragraph that's okay, but I have to come back to the old one, I have to get it done.
Fantastic.
I know, which is a loser quality if you ask me.
That's fine, that's fine.
It's all right.
It's all, again, don't judge, like you said.
And
what about reading? You said you talked about reading, but like what's your, you know, do you read, do you count the number of books you read in a year, or is it just it happens and you don't really
it happens.
care
I don't
about
count,
whether you're reading often, not reading often?
And now the question is like, what am I reading? So there are times when I am endlessly reading newspapers and magazines, but I'm reading. So if I read 3 issues of New Yorker at a stretch, at a go, to me that's reading,
that's a lot.
right?
That's a book, more than a book.
So
at least 5 long form articles in each issue. So
so I would say at least 3-4 hours in a week reading something, anything, whatever thing, it doesn't matter. I don't count books, but there are times when I read a lot of books and there's something interesting. Like I was telling you, I read Shackleton, and then I read Apple in China, and then I read a book which was somebody's grandmother's biography, and right now I saw a movie called The Pale Hills on Amazon, and I thought that's interesting. Also, I asked ChatGPT, my God, I'm not liking myself in this conversation. I asked ChatGPT questions like, why did this happen in this book? Can you give me an answer? Or I asked Google, and there are enough people who are as confused by the ending. So I do that as well. Then found that this movie was based on this Kazuo Ishiguro's book that I did not know existed.
Which
so
one?
I bought that, The Pale Hills. It's his early book. It's a lovely movie. So I read that. And now I have a book called The Marriage at Sea, which is about a couple who got marooned and they just had each other, and I'm curious to know.
Yeah, that's the one that I think I read a review of.
I'm curious to know whether they killed each other or not at the end of it all. So yes.
So safe to say, to Intellectual Voyager we can add content omnivore.
Which is part of the Intellectual Voyage, right?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. No, fair enough.
Yes. Absolutely.
Excellent. So maybe 1 or 2 more questions before we start to wrap up this conversation. Inspiration. I mean, we talked about a lot of things, but any specific things that inspire you today, that kind of you look at this and say, wow, this is incredible. I wish I had more of this. I wish I can aspire for this kind of a,
inspiration or aspiration? What are you asking me about?
Actually, you can pick. I'm primarily interested in inspiration, that, what are the kinds of things that get you to feel like, intellectually stretched, because you've achieved a lot, you've done a lot. So where do you feel like, for example, I was quite curious to know that you had done an undergrad in physics, right? From physics to market consumer psychology, I mean, of course there are tools, but there's a very different fields, right? So any such, new area of exploration that you're starting that you haven't done before? Maybe that's the better question.
I did, so anthropology, I was telling you, I one day decided 2 years ago that I was going to do a course at IIM Organized One, which is 1 module of neuroscience, 1 module of anthropology, and 1 module of big data. And I said, this is, and we talk in consumer theory about psychological foundations of behavior, social and cultural foundations of behavior, and there is big data. So I begged for 2 databases, I got them from industry, and we ran them with a common business problem. And at that time I read I read a lot of anthropology, because I said, give me a reading list, and the people I work with, the anthropologists, gave me a reading list. I loved it, so I read a lot of that. And I'm continuing to so now what I'm really doing, I think, is that if I'm curious about a question, then I try and find out who would be interested in answering that question for me, and can I give a little bit of money to that person to cover whatever expenses, fieldwork and whatever, to figure it out. So, and if you say inspiration, I mean, on an everyday basis, I am just so amazed with what people actually do. It could be the way my maid thinks about something and I'm like, oh my God, why did I not think about it before? Or it could be literally anything. I mean, I am inspired by the fact that you're trying to decode, you know, you're from a computer background, you're trying to decode from conversation which way things are going. But on the inspiration front, I've been spending a lot of time looking at people who have aged well, and that is also part of why it is, I think, and what I mean by aged well are people who are still involved with the world, at peace with themselves, because I have gone through a tortured Viagra versus Vairagya phase, and every time I think I'm done with professional work, I realize that when I sit in on any meeting, I just love it at the end of the day, right? When I pick up, so clearly to me now it's clear that professional work is not it. But so one is of course Dr. Rangarajan, who everybody who meets him still says that he's sharp as a whip, he's still interested, he will still come and give talks. And he's not coming and giving talks because he wants the glory of it all. You know, there's something, as I told you, I think the academics do it better. I have a professor called Jahar Saha. Jahar will go and teach 2 sessions of math in a primary school if he has to do it. If the ministry asks him to come on a committee, he'll do it. If I said, oh Jahar, I actually want to teach conjoint analysis all over again, will you come? He will come and do 2 sessions. And I'm like, how fabulous is that? If IIM Shillong is doing faculty recruitment, he will agree to go on the committee. So I am looking at people like this who seem to not bother about the fruits of what comes out of it, who are not asking in the long run we're dead, what is the point of this learning, and who seem to be doing it. And I find 2 kinds of people seem to do it very well, or actually there's one summary to it, and that is I think the Seva Bhav. So the doctors, even after they've retired, do not mind seeing patients wherever they go. My teacher, Professor Jain, I said to him that, you know, I don't think I want to teach anymore because right now, even recently, because we're getting fewer and fewer students on these core courses. We're supposed to be a hard course, no one wants to come in. And he said, क्या पता उनमें से अगर 4-5 कुछ आगे जाके कुछ कर बैठे तो that's okay. And I'm like, oh my God, is that what drives you? Why am I not like that?
The Seva Bhav.
Right? That's the Seva Bhav, right? They seem to have the Seva Bhav to do what they are doing. And I think that that's something to think about, that the Seva Bhav then keeps you going. So I think it's purpose more than anything else. And I think capitalism by definition takes away, when you take away the purpose of making money, buying another house, when you realize that you have homes that you don't go to, or friends have fancy things they have that is wide open to you but you don't end up going, when you can eat in any restaurant except that you want to eat curd rice at home, then what keeps you going is a really good thing. And I think it is the Seva Bhav in whatever form. Yeah.
2 beautiful ideas there. In fact, remind me of 2 things I should share, I think. I remember an interview with Pandit Ravi Shankar when he was in the 90s and still doing concert performances of 2 hours. And he came to Hyderabad to perform. And there was an interview in which, you know, I think the journalist asked him, like, you know, after all this accomplishment, Bharat Ratna, everything possible for a human being. Oh yeah, my
God, yes.
You know, why are you, you know, willing to put yourself through this 2-hour performance? And he said, well, you know, I'm still trying to figure out if the better way to play Rag Durga.
Oh
right?
my God.
In other words, there is one note that he's still looking for somewhere that he can hit.
And what motivates him to do that? I think there is an inner, it is a, you know, Saraswati ke Pujari, intellectual voyager, Seva Bhav. I think the truth is, and then being self-content, I think the truth is somewhere there.
Yes.
And that is the happiest place to be.
Beautifully said. In fact, and the other thing that struck me when you said Seva Bhav is, there is actually, I mean, I went to Ramakrishna Mission boarding school, so we get we get a lot of this stuff for free, which, like you said, you know, we learn things we didn't realize we learned. And then later on you realize you actually learned something very useful.
Yes.
So there is this particular scene in the Gita where Arjuna is asking Krishna that, you know, what is the posture? What is the correct posture of an ideal learner? And the answer that Arjuna gives is Pranipatena Pariprashnena Sevaya. He says that first have some humility. That's Pranipatena. Learn to bow in front of somebody who can teach you something. And it doesn't matter whether the person is older than you or younger than you, right? Humility. Pariprashnena, fine tune your questions, ask better questions, right? And say, have a spirit of service.
Oh, fabulous.
Right? Because if you have a spirit of service, you can learn much more than people who don't.
See, why did I not know this? But now I know it.
Yeah.
Now
So I always find this very useful.
So
because
now I'll go back and Google it to death.
Yeah. So when people talk about the Socratic method, I often say that the Eastern version of Socratic method is add 2 more things: humility, of course, questions, and a spirit of service towards anybody who can teach you anything.
That's what it is.
Yeah, very interesting. Good connections there. So now to kind of maybe the last and final stretch of this conversation, in terms of as we have been discussing in our conversation today and even earlier, that the New North podcast is part of a larger project to try to find connections between learning and happy longevity. Let's put it that way: super aging and happy longevity. The word learning has appeared in this conversation many times. An intellectual voyager is an intellectually curious voyager who's trying to find new things and new connections. For example, you talked about, I'm clearing space from traditional big company consulting, which may be financially lucrative, but I'm looking for startups where innovation is happening, and even though it's financially not as interesting, I'm doing it because I'm getting something else out of it. So my final question to you today is, do you see a connection between the spirit of inquiry and the idea of aging well?
Only I actually don't. I mean, I do, and let me say that you need one more peg in that. And you see, if all along we're taught that there is you talked earlier about actors and learners, and I'm saying those who are outcome oriented and those who are input oriented. And that's the thing. So if you're outcome oriented and you are aging and you are outcome oriented and you have less outcomes you are achieving in the world, or the world is allowing you to achieve or is asking you to achieve, then I think it can be very frustrating. But if, for example, you are, and that's why I think scientists, academics, you can still, the guy who won the Nobel at 92, I mean, you can still make that discovery. And so I think that contributes. Or I once asked Ram Charan, as you know, and I said, you're traveling all over the world and all that, and just meeting so many companies, and aren't you tired? Aren't you ready to give it up? And he looked at me and said, is there any other way to live? But I'm also seeing equally a lot of people who are actually past 70, and they are getting paranoid about not being relevant. And I think if you are intellectually geared towards staying relevant because that's the outcome you want, I think you end up being a tortured soul. So my question is that how do you make this learning and this voyaging and this curiosity, how do you make it with a spirit of contentment, of non-outcome orientation? I guess back to the Gita and all that stuff. And I think that's a question. And my answer is that then maybe you have to gift the ideas of what you're thinking to other people, or you have to say there is no purpose to it. And if you have been geared all your life and you ask all your clients, what is the so what of this conversation? What are your key takeaways? What are you going to do with this? You ask your students as a result who say, sir, I would need more data on this. And I would say, as a result of having that data, how will it make your decisions better? Now that is like really, that tortures you faster, and I think you will die faster if you don't have that. But if you have this gift, so today I wrote to the editor of a paper who I know very well. I texted him and I said, I read somewhere that now we're going into a multipolar world. So I said, hey, I want to hear from historians, I want to hear from geopolitical people, I want to hear from business, from foreign policy. What will it take for India to navigate the multipolar world well? Now that's an interesting idea. I'm interested in it. Would I be as interested if I did not have a child whose future lay in India? I don't know. But what I pray for and what I yearn for is the ability to not ask so what and what's the outcome, in which case I am sorted, and I think it will have a connection with how well I live. But right now, that piece is still missing, because I don't come from a place of Seva Bhav. I am an academic, but I am a visiting academic, which means my dharma was to bring the real world, the capitalist world into
To the
this.
ivory tower.
When I go into academic or into think tanks who are doing absolutely marvelous work, the first thought is, my God, how do we get these guys funded? How do we make their work sell?
Yeah.
So that is a bit of a tortured place. I think if you can add that dollop of, for its own sake, the voyage of discovery,
Yeah.
then I think there is a huge connection.
I mean, there has been this statement forever that the journey is the reward, and for
Yes.
us, we have been programmed to hit destinations,
Yes.
and the journeys are always a means to an end, and the end
And we're
gets all
always
the credit.
evaluating the journeys. You and I have served on boards together, and we're always looking at when do we pull the plug on this experiment, right?
Yeah.
Oh my God, why do you have so many experiments that are not integrating back into your company? Oh,
Yeah.
why?
Yes, absolutely.
So that's the bad, which is why those who don't have that baggage, I think, age very well. Those who do have that baggage really screw it up.
Very interesting. Well, I can say that this has been a very nice conversation, Rama, and it's always been a
Likewise.
pleasure to spend time with you, talk to you. I think all the board meetings we had in the past, and I feel like we just picked up from where we left off quite a
Yes.
few years ago.
And a valuable friendship, and I've
Yeah.
learned a lot from here as well.
No, thank you so much. I think the learning goes both ways, and thank you for agreeing to come to New North and come to make this trip. I know it's not an easy trip to make, but we really value everything that Rama has spoken about today, and I'm sure as an audience, this is just a gold mine of great insight and great information. Thank you so much.
Wow, and good luck with the project, and or what do you call it? You call it the problem? The project.
The project.
Good luck with the project, and I'm going to learn more about it. The outcomes are all yours. The learning is all mine. Thank you, Shantanu.
Thank you
Pleasure
so
as
much.
always.
Thank you, Rama, as always.